Welcome back to Hey Kentucky. We are here at the Kraft Center where Kentucky's about to practice, and Tom Hart of ESPN and the SEC Network, who's called a couple Kentucky games already, probably doing some more, is here. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. It's always great to be here in Lexington.
Now, you do games all over the country, but there's got to be something special about doing them in Lexington, just from fan support, if nothing else.
There is nothing like it. I mean, there really isn't. From just the enormity of it all to the emotion. And I tell people this all the time. In fact, I was just telling our producer last week when we were here, I said, pay attention to Rupp Arena right before the lineups. There is more energy in this building than any college basketball arena I've ever been in. And it starts with the players, the fans, the cheerleaders jumping down with each other. It's amazing. This is one of those places that I come, and I'm lucky to work so much in the SEC. We get a lot in football. One of those places where I get to come and pinch myself, and I'm so thankful that I have the job that I do.
You and I were talking before we started about the rest of the SEC. Why? I mean, obviously part of the reason is they're not as good. But why don't you feel like that energy is there necessarily in those other gyms? It's there when Kentucky plays, but when a normal game is going on.
I think football is so ingrained generationally in the South that people know that every college football Saturday I'm going to be at my alma mater or at my home state's stadium. Basketball is a little bit different. And so you can look at teams and programs that have been good that are just so overshadowed by the football program. I think Georgia's the best example out there. Football is so important in Athens, and the alums that are in Athens or in Atlanta pour their heart and soul and wallets into getting to Athens for a college football Saturday. Basketball becomes an afterthought. And Mark Fox could have a top 25 team, but until Kentucky comes to town, they're not going to have a top 25 type crowd.
But he doesn't even have a top 25 team. I mean, part of it at some point is a chicken and egg thing, right? Like, they've got to get better. This is the worst, in my opinion, the league has top to bottom ever been. I mean, do you agree with that?
Well, I think the optics are there. I mean, because not only we got 3 ranked teams right now. If we get 4 in the NCAA tournament, I don't know that Arkansas is a deserving team as that 4th team, but that might be a better snapshot of the landscape of college basketball as a whole, because the sport's down as a whole, and it's been down for 5 years. I mean, everywhere outside of the Blue Bloods, the sport is down. But the other optics of it is that 2 of the best teams in this league, Florida and South Carolina, play great defensive basketball, and especially in the half court. It's not even 94 feet like Arkansas when they were running and pressing and creating excitement. So you get what you get. What we had Wednesday night, which is a rock fight, which was a great basketball game in terms of 2 defensive teams going head-to-head, but it's not much fun to watch.
But was it a great game? Part of what gets me, and this happened with Kentucky and Mississippi State the other night, are the foul calls.
Yeah.
I mean, they called 55 in that game you were talking about. They called 52 in the Kentucky game. I think they called 57 in a game, Vandy and Ole Miss. Is it too much?
It's way too much, and that's part of the optics, and it's part of the flow. You can't get into enjoying the game. The players can't get into it. One of the things that happens that's bothersome for me as a fan, and the referees, for the most part, are calling the game like they are supposed to be called. Rules that were put in place and agreed to by the Rules Committee, which is made up of coaches. So let's just get that out there to begin with. But it's the off-ball fouls that you don't see. A guy in the post trying to just get a little bit of position that's 20 feet from the basketball. Why can't we let that go? Why can't we let that fluid movement kind of get going within the half court so we can enjoy the game? So I think those optics are a huge part of it, because the fans then can't get into it. You know, when you're shooting 40 free throws a game, there's not a whole lot of excitement there. But the SEC isn't alone in that. You know, that's throughout college basketball.
All right, talk to me about this Kentucky team. Play South Carolina tomorrow. I think it might be the best offensive team Cal's had. Could be one of the best teams offensively schools had, in history. Do you think the defense is good enough for them to be the last team standing?
When they're disciplined, yeah. Yeah, it is good enough. But I think the offense will rule the day. I mean, that North Carolina game was the best game we've seen all college basketball season. That's the kind of game we need as college basketball fans and as promoters. If we get that in a Final Four or national championship, the ratings will be through the roof, and everybody say college basketball is back. But when I think of this Kentucky team, first and foremost, I think of De'Aaron Fox. I mean, he is on pace to do something that no Kentucky point guard, under Cal or otherwise, has ever done, which is mind-blowing when you consider it. He's one of only 6 players in the country that's averaging 15 points, 5 boards, and 5 assists. There has never been a Kentucky point guard to average 15, 5, and 5.
Look at you with the stats. I like that.
Well, I had a plane flight, and I had to have something to do on the airplane. I think that, though, illustrates his value to this team. I mean, it's not a great rebounding team from the guards. Malik Monk's not a guy that's going to get in there and mix it up. So you've got to have De'Aaron Fox, and especially important over the course of this game against South Carolina. Their half-court defense is almost impenetrable. He's got to be able to use his speed to break through that front line, because if you allow them to set up their perimeter, they'll lock you down. They didn't allow a 3 to Florida on Wednesday night. They are so good, and they get in your face, and they turn you over, and all of those turnovers happen in the half court. So that's going to be really important.
Tom Hart calling the game tomorrow night, 6 o'clock on ESPN. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
There you go. We'll be right back on Hey Kentucky.